This podcast episode is brought to you by Coors Light. These days, everything is go, go, go. It's nonstop hustle all the time. Work, friends, family, expect you to be on 24/7. Well, sometimes you just need to reach for a Coors Light because it's made to chill. Coors Light is cold lagered, cold filtered, and cold packaged. It's as crisp and refreshing as the Colorado Rockies. It is literally made to chill. Coors Light is the one I choose when I need to unwind. So when you want to hit reset, reach for the beer that's made to chill. Get Coors Light in the new look delivered straight to your door with Drizzly or Instacart. Celebrate responsibly. Coors Brewing Company, Golden, Colorado.
This is Greg Olson, inviting you to check out my new Blue Wire podcast, TE1, where I interview tight ends throughout the history of the NFL who have helped revolutionize the position. TE1 is presented by the Chevy Silverado. The Silverado is all about grit. It's strong and dependable, exactly like playing tight end. Just like the incredible players we sit down with on the podcast, the Chevy Silverado is in a league of its own. Strong, advanced, and dependable. Download TE1 today, wherever you listen to podcasts.
The Timeline is a Blue Wire podcast. Welcome to the Timeline of Phoenix Suns podcast, back again to talk about some wings. My name is Mike, happy to be here as always, and as always, I'm here with Sam. Sam, how are you doing?
Lukewarm to be here as always. Back again for another week. We are T-minus 8 weeks out from the NBA draft, and our guest, well, you go ahead and introduce him, Mike. Very excited to talk to this guy as always.
Me too. Joining us to talk about the draft and talk about two guys specifically. I think we're going to start to try to narrow our focus when it comes to the draft. Instead of talking about the entire thing as a whole, we want to start focusing on individual guys. And to help us with that, joining us, known on Twitter as Zona Sports, I believe, is Brandon, who writes for Bright Side of the Sun. Brandon, how are you doing?
Doing great. Thanks for having me on, guys. Glad the draft date is finally set. Feels like we've been stuck with this draft class forever. So, but yeah, I'm happy to come on here and talk about it with you guys.
I mean, I feel particularly bad for guys like you, to be honest, because you have you have a Patreon, Brandon. You put out your list recently of your first. Was it a big board or a mock draft of the 2021 class?
It was a big board. I had to do a little 2021 digging just to keep my sanity, because this 2020 class,
just to save your sanity, because how many months has it been of 2020 coverage at this point?
By now, all these guys should be drafted and on teams. We should have had summer league and everything. So it's just such a long process. Right.
Do you feel like that has helped you, or do you think that you started to overthink some of these things at some point, or,
I think it's
been
helped.
A long time.
The more you watch is the better, obviously, but there are some things you'll overthink, and I don't know. It's just a weird situation all around, but for the most part, it's probably helped, as annoying as this class has been.
Yeah,
besides these guys that we're going to talk about, a lot of fun.
Yeah, I actually think there's some interesting players in this draft, and I think there's obviously, as there always is, there's just going to be one guy that just hits from pick 8 to pick 20. And that's going to be the guy that's going to be maybe possibly the best, even the best player in this draft, potentially. I'm not fully bought into the guys at the very top of the draft. Maybe you are, and we don't have to talk about that in this episode, but I just think the Suns are in an interesting spot in this 10th pick, and there's some guys that could be available there. Or maybe even if they're good enough, they're the type of guys that you could trade up for. That's something that I think we're going to talk about too. Before we get to the draft, I just wanted to talk about this because it was really fun to watch. This Denver Lakers series is the first time that we're seeing a legitimate big man battle in a conference final matchup since the Spurs were in it. And I find it fascinating, and I find it really fun to watch. We had a long conversation about the worth of big men recently on this podcast, and it feels like the playoffs are trying to throw that back in my face, which is fair. I actually enjoy being wrong. because basketball, if it was entirely predictable, would be pretty boring. But I wanted to get your guys' thoughts on watching that matchup. Brandon, when you watch this battle between Denver and LA, does that make you think any differently about the NBA as a whole, or even Ayton with the Suns, or what does it make you think about?
Yeah, so I've taken a step back a little bit, just reminding myself this is not normal. We're in a bubble, and it's who knows if this is still the Western Conference Finals matchup in a regular postseason. So I've definitely...
Right. You mean Jamal Murray might not be Steph Curry?
Yeah, who knows? I mean, for all we know, it could be, Clippers, Lakers. It could be Rockets, Clippers. It could be any kind of combination. But that's getting off topic a little bit. I think, honestly, just seeing how bigs can still survive and, especially looking at DeAndre, and he's someone that can guard on the perimeter, and I don't think he's going to get played off the floor. So that's in itself just like a cheat code in a playoff series. So I think this helps. I'm not going to go out here and say he's going to be this crazy dominant player like right away if they make it like next year or something. But I think this definitely helps with his trajectory. And at the end of the day, you just need very good players on your team. And Denver has a very good team surrounding Jokic. And you look at, obviously Anthony Davis has LeBron James. So I'm not going to say like the bigs are back, but it definitely helps when you're like evaluating DeAndre Ayton's potential in the playoffs.
Sam, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely affirming of the value of a big. I agree with everything Brandon said. And you and I have talked about for a while, Mike, how DeAndre Ayton is a physical freak of nature, how he has all the attributes to break small ball lineups and do sorts of things that could be useful in the playoffs. It's just, when you look at a guy like Anthony Davis or Nikola Jokic, I mean, Anthony Davis hit 2 clutch threes last night, and we know that DeAndre Ayton doesn't quite do that yet. I mean, he started shooting them, but he doesn't, he's not at that level yet. So obviously that's one thing that stands out. And then, Jokic just showed aggression last night at a level that we obviously haven't seen from DeAndre Ayton yet. I think you can do a lot of the things that Jokic does with creating out of the high post is stuff that Monty Williams maybe ultimately wants to get to a place where he can do those same sorts of things with DeAndre Ayton eventually in year 3 or 4 or 5 or whenever. But he's obviously not there yet. I wouldn't expect DeAndre Ayton to really have stretches like Jokic did last night where he's scoring 11 straight points in the clutch and doing it through the post and as well as hitting threes and putting the ball on the floor and dribbling and doing all sorts of cool stuff. So Ayton's got a long way to go. But it is encouraging to see the fact that there is that big man battle in the Western Conference and even in the Eastern Conference as well. The fact that a guy like Bam Adebayo is playing such a big role for the Heat. That's critical big men on 3 out of the 4 remaining teams.
Yeah. Yeah, I think more than anything, it makes you glad that you have a guy that is built to be able to defend those big men as well. I think previously, you're as somebody putting together a Western Conference team, especially, you're kind of looking for guys that can switch at everything. And maybe if the Warriors come back as dominant as they can next season, that's going to matter even more. But now I think every team is going to look for guys that can defend Anthony Davis and defend Jokic, and the Suns have a guy who could potentially do that. The DeAndre Ayton did only play in 1 game against the Lakers this season, and he was fine. It was in January. It was actually New Year's Day. And I think Ayton had something like 16 points and 14 rebounds. LeBron James had like a 31-point triple-double, of course. And Anthony Davis had something like 26 points. I haven't gone back and watched that. I plan to at some point because I think that's just an interesting matchup for the Suns, being that they do legitimately play 2 bigs and try to do that as much as possible.
And because the season might not start until March, and you might run into stuff to
I might do a whole episode. On that one game.
I mean, but, David Nash. We all love David Nash here, but he just wrote an entire newsletter on a lineup that played 7 minutes in the regular season. So that's where the Suns fan base is right now.
Man. Yeah, and I do think about how it's important to have a lineup to play against those teams if you make the playoffs, and then like I always come back to the idea that I'm still getting ahead of myself here. The Suns just need to make the playoffs. That's like the most important thing right now. And there's, of course, a danger of like building your roster to beat a specific team. We watched the Rockets just sort of downgrade their size eventually just to try and beat the Warriors, and then they get killed by size in the playoffs after all of that. So, there's a danger of that anyway. But I think just a reminder of how important these guys can be. And I also think an example of what it takes for a big man to be successful, because, you made a comparison, Sam, of Anthony Davis and DeAndre, and I'd argue that they're just so different. They're not even close to the same types of players. And if you just look at numbers, I think like early in the career of Anthony Davis and early in DeAndre Ayton's career, maybe you can make some sort of comparison, but they're so drastically different in play style that the type of use for each of them is going to be so different if they're ever in the playoff series, if the Suns are ever in a playoff series. But I think it's just been fascinating to watch it and fun in a lot of different ways. Brandon, do you have any other thoughts on that series that you wanted to talk about?
Yeah, so I'll just add on to what you're talking about with Davis and Ayton. They do have one thing in common, and that's pissing off their fan bases by taking mid-range jumpers.
Hell yeah!
So that's all I have on that, though. I think Adebayo is actually a really good. So that's someone that Ayton should watch a lot of, especially from the playmaking standpoint. Study his film as much as you can, because if he can turn anything into near what Adebayo is with the dribbling and the short roll playmaking, then that would elevate this offense.
And the defense,
too.
You know what's kind of crazy about Anthony Davis though is I'm there with you, Brandon. I've given him shit about the mid-range jumpers too, but he's shooting 60% or something crazy on mid-range shots in the playoffs. He's not a very good mid-range shooter just by the numbers in the regular season, and then it's a small sample size. Who knows if it's sustainable, but that's kind of the beauty of the playoffs, right? The playoffs is small sample size. It doesn't have to be sustainable. So he kind of just got hot at the right time, and he's lifting their offense in a really big way through that mid-range shot, which I think is pretty interesting.
Yeah, he takes some tough ones too. And I think the Lakers were kind of laughed at when this team was put together at the beginning of the season. And, LeBron had some comments about, well, this is built for the playoffs. We're trying to build this team for the playoffs. And they did. I think you watch that team and they're kind of built for when the game looks like it does right now. And the versatility of being able to play Anthony Davis at center and power forward, depending on who you're playing against, is pretty interesting. It's nice to have Dwight Howard to just kind of beat up Jokic for a few plays. And that's kind of what Baines did for the Suns for a while. And it's just a reminder.
Physical tone setters, as Bain fans
you need some tone setters. You need some tone setters. And ideally, it would be a guy like Baines instead of Dwight Howard. I'm not, I think you need to be on a team with LeBron James if you're Dwight Howard in order to be successful at this point. But let's move on. Let's talk about, I'm glad we spent some time here up front talking about big men and talking about the center position because of how important it is for the Suns. But no matter what, wings are vital in the NBA today. The Suns have a few pretty good ones, and if I had to guess, I would guess that all of them are returning next season. That does not necessarily mean that we have enough. So we wanted to cover two specific wings, two people that you've written about recently, Brandon, in Isaac Okoro and Devin Vassell. Let's start with Okoro, I think, because we've talked a little bit about Vassell in this podcast in the past. We haven't really covered Isaac Okoro much. What are your thoughts? Let's start just from a general sense on Okoro, maybe even his fit on the Suns.
Yeah, so before Ayton showed the flashes of the shooting, I was sort of against the fit, even though I'm pretty high on Okoro in general. He's the best on-ball defender in the class, very physical, just like a powerful wing that, teams are going to covet because he can take on the number one assignment of the opponent's team, night in, night out. And when you think about that, that would free up Mikal Bridges from having to guard the best player every night and getting, Mikal off ball, to wreak havoc with those limbs just everywhere. I think that's where he's at his best, just playing as a free safety. He can definitely disrupt, on ball with some of the best players in the league. We've seen that. But having someone like Okoro that you can assign on the best player of your opponent would really unlock a level to this defense that they just have not had in a long time. And
yeah, I read the free safety comparison in your article for Mikal that I thought was really interesting because I think Suns fans right now associate Mikal with strong perimeter point of attack defense, but you're right, that's maybe not necessarily unlocking his full potential defensively. And so I think a guy like Okoro, if he has those sorts of strengths, is really interesting. For people who may have absolutely no prior knowledge of him, I'm just going to read out the
Yeah.
stats. Isaac Okoro, 19 years old from the University of Auburn. His stats don't... This is the interesting thing about it is, he's only 19 years old. His stats don't pop off the page, in my opinion. He averaged 13 points, 4.5 rebounds, 2 assists, a steal, and a block per game. He shot 61% on twos, which is really good for a wing, but only 29% on threes and only 67% from the free throw line. The thing that really stood out to me, just even before I even really watched much film on him, is just from a physical standpoint. 6'6", 6'9" wingspan, and 225 pounds at 19 years old. This is not something to me, and Brandon, you can share your thoughts on this after, but like that's a very NBA ready body in a way that I don't think you usually see from most 19-year-old wing prospects.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the difference between, I think, him and Vassell. They both, so Okoro, he's more of like a guy that can guard fours than like with Vassell, you're probably gonna be playing more of the 2 and 3. Okoro is just like a power wing, and I think he can also guard some ones. Like I don't think he's gonna be like locking up Steph Curry or anything, but he can definitely switch and hold his own on most ones, and just the ability to guard positions 1 through 4, and him being like the athlete he is, along with like how smart he is too. He's probably one of the most underrated passers in this class. Like he's not a playmaker, but he just knows he makes the right decision more often than not. He was on a really good Auburn team. He understands to keep the ball moving, to cut without the ball, just super high IQ, kind of like Mikal Bridges, where Ricky Rubio is going to reward him on his cuts, and he's one of the best finishers in the class too. He
can dunk.
Oh yeah, yeah. He can finish through contact. He can dunk. He shot 68% at the rim, which is beyond elite. So
yeah, that's like not just a Josh Jackson type dunker,
yeah,
right? Like not just a guy who hunts for posters and gets one every once in a while.
And he has an actual frame, and Jackson's kind of like a wiry
right.
frame.
Well, that's exactly what I was talking about.
Yeah.
I mean, Josh Jackson from Kansas came into the NBA probably at 200, right? So for Okoro
Yeah.
to be 19 and 225 is crazy to me.
Yeah,
I think that's why when you look at mock drafts, he's mocked so high, because I think you can sort of break it down if you're being as superficial as possible. This is a small forward, power forward who can't shoot and plays good defense. And you think, well, okay, cool, maybe 14, 15, at 16, maybe you get a guy like that. But when you see him, he looks strong. He looks very, very, very strong. He looks like a guy that will, like, if I had to guess, at some point I would guess that he's going to play center in some sort of small ball lineup at some point of his career, because right now, 6'5", 6'6", 225, and 19, like when he's 25, how strong is he going to be? Will he be PJ Tucker strong? I would bet on it more than I would bet against it. I think what I look at when I look at guys like this, I think what's really important is basketball IQ. People consider him to have a very high basketball IQ, and I think in order to be a good defender, you have to have a good basketball IQ. So when you draft a guy like Okoro, you say, well, he's going to contribute right away defensively. He can cut, he can score at the rim. But in order to be a high-level contributor at some point in his career, you have to count on him being able to develop some sort of shot. I tend to believe that guys with high IQs who are good defenders can learn how to shoot at some point in their career, usually. What do you think about his mechanics, Brandon? And do you think his shot is the type of thing that can get there at some point? Because it looks a little funky to me when I watch it.
Yeah, the jumper needs a ton of work up top, but like the good news is like the base actually looks fine. Like his footwork isn't terrible. So I think as long as he's open to a mechanics overhaul with his release, because it's really like rigid and just kind of stiff at times, and I think he has like one of the best work ethics in this class too. So I don't think there's going to be any question of like him trying to improve. And all the NBA intel, like all the coaches he's ever had, just like praise his work ethic and say he's the best worker that they've ever had. And he was actually for the RSCI, which is like basically the consensus rankings coming in from high school. He was ranked as the 36th best freshman in college basketball coming in. And now he's probably going to be drafted, above everyone other than maybe like 2 or 3 of those guys that were in front of him.
Yeah, wow.
And
that's crazy.
Yeah, and I think that really has to do with his work ethic. And that's something, you look at Javon Carter when he was at West Virginia, he shot 31% like his first 2 seasons. And, he wasn't supposed to be a shooter. He wasn't supposed to be anything, but he just worked his ass off and, ended up shooting, 39% his junior and senior year. And now he's at over 40% in the NBA. And I think betting on players that want to get better is always smart. And he's someone that I think will just continue to like outwork his rankings and his peers.
I really like it. And you want to know why I really like that comparison too, is talking about the shooting. Mikal Bridges, I think, is another guy. Like, Mikal Bridges was not a good shooter as soon as he entered Villanova. Mikal Bridges didn't become a 40% three-point shooter immediately. He was like a 44% three-point shooter, something crazy by his junior year finally. But I think the critical thing to remember, right, if you draft this guy, is Isaac Okoro's 19 and Mikal Bridges was 22 when he was drafted, right? So, like, the focus needs to be not so much on next year. I think Suns fans are compelled to think about next year, and they're compelled to think about these prospects in terms of what can they contribute right away, because we want the Suns to make the playoffs. But, like, what are your realistic expectations of a guy like Isaac Okoro in year one, Brennan? Because just speaking for myself, I would draft a guy like this with the expectation of he's a hard worker, he has an NBA-ready body, and I'm betting on the production starting to come in year 3 or 4 when he could maybe be like a starting caliber wing, especially if the shot develops. But in year 1, I'm expecting maybe a guy you throw out there for 10 minutes a game and he gives you some good defense in some lineups, but otherwise not actually contributing much immediately.
Yeah, who I think he'll have a similar career arc to is, I hate comparisons, but like OG Anunoby from Toronto. Just how they slowly worked him up, and now he's like not terrible offensively, and he's actually showing some signs of shooting. I think you have to be realistic bringing him in. You're gonna have to develop him slowly, as you mentioned, Sam, and just I think they kind of have that luxury now, which is something they haven't had in the past when they've taken guys like Bender and Jackson, and just so if they take him at number 10, they have to realize he's probably going to be your backup 3-4 that'll play 10-15 minutes a night, and he's probably not going to do much on offense, but he's going to really try and play defense and do whatever he can to disrupt the opponent's best player when he's on the court.
Yeah, I look at him, and just physically looking at him play defense in a lot of these scouting videos that you can find, and watching full games if you can find them. And it reminded me of Dort in the playoffs, which is funny to say because Dort wasn't even drafted, but then immediately became a contributor on a good team in the playoffs. But the reason I say that is because Dort came into the league capable of guarding James Harden. A lot of people talk about what James Harden's good at. Commonly, people don't mention how strong he is. He's very, very, very strong. And for Dort to be able to stay in front of him consistently meant that he was NBA ready basically right away. And that's what I think of when I look at Okoro. I look at his body and I say, look, this guy can stay in front of even the most athletic players in the NBA, likely right away. And, I would think that if he came into the league, he'd be capable of doing that even in his rookie year. There's a chance that, just like you said, I think he'd be basically 4th in line for all the forward positions, but there's 2 on the court at a time. So 15 minutes is a fair thing to get out of him, but I think there's a chance with a guy like him where he plays so well against certain guys that he ends up closing the game because of his defense and how important it is on certain guys. The question I have, though, is what kind of ceiling do you think he has? Because I think this is an important thing. We don't know where he's going to get picked. This draft is so bizarre. He's been everywhere as far as mock drafts, and it's difficult to know where he's gonna be picked. If he's available at 10, say the Suns pick him, what do you think his absolute ceiling could be if things go right for him?
So yeah, he's been mocked anywhere from like going 2nd to 12th. So it's a pretty wide range for him. I think as far as his ceiling goes, the shot is obviously the swing skill for him, and I don't think anyone believes he's going to be like this crazy shot maker, but if he can at least get to the point of competence and hit a high-end shooting outcome, I could see kind of like an Andre Iguodala type. Wow. That's obviously like very high-end. I'm not projecting that. Yeah. But that's sort of the type of role I think he'd fill. I just think like the ability to finish, and if he puts together all the other stuff, his handle is pretty. I actually like his handle too. I think he can mostly get where he wants, and just the ability to finish too just really makes him a well-rounded player.
Yeah, just like you mentioned that you said he was an underrated passer, but just the passing highlights you posted in your article I thought was really cool, because it's more affirmation that this is a guy where if he does develop more of the off the dribble ability, you can trust him to plug into a 0.5 system and make the right decisions, right?
Exactly.
And that's kind of critical as we talk about. Yeah, I mean, not every prospect has that level of IQ, so that was very cool to see as well.
Yeah, and then low end would be like Michael Kidd-Gilchrist. He just doesn't figure out the shot, and doesn't know what he's doing.
Yeah.
So,
or like a Rondé Hollis Jefferson or something, right? Like, see, that's not such a great player. It's probably
so.
Still,
it all comes down to the development staff, really. I think of whoever lands him.
Yeah.
Right. Because he says Kawhi. Right. If you asked him, he'd say Kawhi, because that's how guys are. They want to be the best of the best of the best. And I think when there's a great video for those who haven't seen it. Mike Schmitz, the ESPN guy, for those who remember, did a long scouting report video with DeAndre Ayton where they broke down plays. There's one of him doing this same thing with Okoro. Watch it if you haven't watched it. It's fascinating to hear him talk about specific plays, but the three guys that he talked about are Kawhi Leonard, of course, and I think if you're a wing defender, of course you're going to watch Kawhi Leonard footage. The other guy was Jaylen Brown. I think he actually grew up with Jaylen Brown. These are guys that played against each other, and they're from close neighborhoods, so they played against each other their whole lives. And he looks at Jaylen Brown as a guy that is successful early in his career, and he thinks that he could model his game after him. And the other guy that he mentioned was Andre Iguodala. So I think he's aware of those types of things. And I think a big thing, the difference I think between Okoro and Vassell, who we're going to talk about next, is that Okoro is more of a 4. I look at him and I say he's a 4. And I think when you talk about his handles, Brandon, I think they're a plus handle at the 4 position.
Oh, yeah. For his position, for what he's supposed to be, they're a plus. He's not like a point forward or anything like that.
Right. And I don't know that they would necessarily be as big of a plus for him if he were more of a 3, the way, like, I think Devin Vassell, although he could probably still play both positions, I think maybe it wouldn't be as much of a plus there. But I do think he's really interesting, and I just think if you had to guess, and I'm sorry to put you on the spot like this, do you think he'd be available for the Suns at 10?
So I don't think Okoro or Vassell will both be there, but I think there is a chance one of them will be. Just because you look at the wing depth in this class, and there's not a ton of it, and there's multiple teams that could use one. So, you have Denny, Okoro, and Vassell, and after that, it's just pretty much guards and bigs. So, it's tough. It really just depends, like, with who trades up as well. So it's tough to project, but I'd put it. I think there's like a 50-50 chance one of Okoro or Vassell are there, and it really just depends on who goes first and where they go.
Yeah, well, I'm glad we're covering them then. Let me ask you this. I know you've written about Killian Hayes as well in the past. We talked a little bit about Killian Hayes with Spencer Pearlman last month when we did our last draft episode, and I think there's plenty more we could say. But you said in your article, if Killian Hayes drops to 10, you take him in an instant, regardless of who else is on the board. And beyond that, I believe you also said you would consider... I could be getting this wrong. Did you say you would trade up to get Killian Hayes in one of your articles?
Oh, yeah, I would.
Guy that I'm thinking of? You are? Okay, good. So I am right about that. If Okoro and Vassell, if your intel tells you that neither of them... Well, let's start with just Okoro. If you don't think he's going to last till 10, would you trade up for him, or you would only take him if he fell?
I would only take him if he fell. I don't think he's worth giving up future assets for. It also depends on what the asking price is, too, I guess. Like, if they just traded up like 2 spots for him and it's cheap, then maybe. But I wouldn't trade up to like 4 or 5 or anything crazy like that for Okoro.
Sure.
Even though sports had a break, your business didn't. You have to keep moving, and that makes hiring more important than ever. Indeed is here to help. Indeed.com is the #1 job site in the world because Indeed gets you the best people fast. Unlike other sites, Indeed gives you full control and payment flexibility over your hiring. You only pay for what you need, and you can pause your account at any time. There's no long-term contracts. Plus, Indeed provides powerful tools to make your search that much easier, like sponsored jobs, which are shown to be 3.5 times more likely to result in a hire. With 73% of online job seekers visiting Indeed each month, Indeed is going to get you the important hire you need. just like they have for over 3 million businesses. Right now, Indeed is offering our listeners a free $75 credit to boost your job post, which means quality candidates will see it fast. Try out Indeed with free $75 credit at Indeed.com/Blue Wire. This is their best offer available anywhere. Go right now to Indeed.com/Blue Wire. Terms and conditions apply. Offer valid through September 30th. The wait is finally over. Football is back. You might not be at the game this year, but you can still be in on the action at BetOnline. BetOnline is going the extra mile to make sure you can get in on every possible chance to win this season. From game spreads to totals to team and player coaching props, BetOnline gives you more options to wager than anywhere else. You can get in on their season opening bonuses today and start off wagering on wins, divisions, and championship futures all day, every day. Head to BetOnline today and take advantage of all the great sign-up bonuses. Don't forget to use the promo code BlueWire at betonline.ag. That's BlueWire, all one word. BetOnline, your online sportsbook experts. I think we've made, as a fan base, assumptions about the type of guy that James Jones likes, or Jeff Bauer, depending on who you believe is pulling the strings.
Where is he?
And
we still haven't seen David Nash and Jeff Bauer in the same room at the same time. So that's all I'm saying.
I think that Okoro is the type of guy that if the Suns picked him, I think it would give you an indication of how confident they are in their staff as far as development goes. There's no G League team, obviously, but you're picking a 10. You're not picking a guy that you want to play in the G League anyway. You want this guy to be, even if he's not playing, on the bench with your NBA team, getting used to the NBA life, which who knows what that'll be next season anyway. But if you remember, James Jones talked about when the previous coach was fired, Kokoshkov, he talked about bringing in a development type staff, and that's what he considered Monty Williams. It wasn't even a win now move to him. It was more like a culture development move. And I think Okoro is a guy that you have to be really confident in your ability to develop players to pick a guy like him, because the high level outcome of what he could be is so good with the right system. And I'm glad you said that, Brandon. When we talk about what we assume James Jones guys are, the sort of ready-made NBA players who are good at shooting, well, that's what Devin Vassell is. And I'll tell you guys this. I've watched a lot of footage of people in this draft because, like we talked about, there's been a lot of time to do it. I'm probably more prepared to talk about one of the worst drafts in the last 10 years than any other draft that's existed because of the amount of time that we have to do it.
But hey,
and
you're
here's
not
what
a draft
happens.
guy,
But I'm not a draft guy. Yeah, I'm not out there telling you everyone's wrong, but me. Yeah. But here's the thing. I'll watch all these guys, and I'll watch Okoro for 45 minutes breaking down film with Mike Schmitz, and I'll go, yeah, I could see it. Yeah, this guy's good. And I'll watch some footage of Kira Lewis, and I'll be like, yeah, Kira Lewis, I could see it. I could see how he could be good. But then I watch Devin Vassell, and all I could think is, oh, this is easy. This is the guy. This is clearly the guy. He's so smart, and he's so long, and he can shoot. These three things put together in a package is called Mikal Bridges. And when you watch Devin Vassell, all I can do is compare him to Mikal Bridges. And that means I'm picturing a potential team with two Mikal Bridges on that team. And I love that idea. Now, if I had the fourth pick, I'd probably pick Devin Vassell at this point. And I wouldn't feel bad about it in any way. Am I insane, Brandon? Am I crazy for thinking this?
Are you a lunatic?
Not
Am
at all.
I a lunatic? Yes.
He's ranked 4th on my board, which is higher than most.
Oh.
So not at all. I'm very high on him. Yeah, I would even consider trading up for him. That's how much I like him. But
wow,
me too. I 100% agree on that. And I think, to me, this is one of those obvious wins if you draft a guy like Devin Vassell. And I feel like it's the type of win that maybe not all GMs would be on board for. And I just don't know where he's going to fall. He's actually commonly mocked at 10 where the Suns are picking. And if that happens, talk about a win. What do you like about Devin Vassell, Brandon? You have him 4th, which obviously I agree with. But what do you like about it?
Yeah, so he's the best team defender in the class by far, arguably the best overall defender. Just like super disruptive, gets a ton of deflections, smart on rotations, help defense, jump in the passing lanes. And he's really good at like baiting the offense too, to like exactly like Mikal Bridges. So the one difference with him and Mikal would just be, Mikal's a little bit longer. He has like 3 inches on his wingspan. And that's not even like, Vassell is still a 6'10" wingspan, which is insane. So it's not even a knock on him. It just shows you how freakish Mikal is. But he's in the same category, just being a glue guy that's a very good decision maker, high IQ, which is all the things Okoro are. But the difference is obviously he shot 41% in his 2 years at Florida State from 3. So that's a known commodity. And that's why I have him over Vassell at the moment. Even though I do think, the athletic limitations could, there is a world where Okoro ends up as a better prospect if he hits a high outcome. But Vassell really fits, what we know or think James Jones likes too. Sophomore, can shoot, plays defense, high IQ. So just would be awesome to watch him play with Mikal Bridges defensively.
I took the liberty of pulling up the stats. If you want the comparison, do you want the junior year Mikal Bridges comparison versus sophomore year Devin Vassell? It's pretty insane. Bridges averaged this is per 40 minutes to put them on an even playing field. Bridges had 22 points, 6 rebounds, 2 assists, 1.9 steals, 1.3 blocks. Vassell had 18 points, a little bit less, 7 rebounds, 2 assists, exactly the same 1.9 steals, exactly the same 1.3 blocks, which is a funny coincidence. Bridges had a 65% true shooting. Vassell had 59% true shooting. I think the difference there is that both were good three-point shooters. Mikal got to the line a little bit more. And he shot a little bit better from the line, and he also seems to just do a little bit better with his 2-pointers. Both of these guys had great advanced stats. I love some of the stats you brought up in your article too, Brandon. You said the only guys in recent NBA history to shoot 40% from 3 with a 4% block rate and a 2% steal rate are Devin Vassell, Danny Green, Robert Covington, and Derek White. And I think that's just really cool company to be in for what the Suns are looking for. Because if you've committed to Devin Booker as your number 1 and DeAndre Ayton as your number 2, and you have the choice to add a role player like a prime Danny Green or a Robert Covington or even a guy like Derek White is looking up as well, just high IQ, great team defenders. No promises that again, if we don't like playing the comparison game too heavily here, but no promises that he turns out like the next Robert Covington, but if that's what he's projecting similar to, that is a really exciting thing. It's obvious why so many people online, I think, would have the Vassell fever.
Yeah, definitely. And I think there's a lot of he has a little bit of underrated upside too, just in terms of, Florida State's system is it kind of limits any high volume shooting or one player being super ball dominant, just because they're so well balanced and just the way they play. It's kind of similar to Phoenix in a little bit, but they just don't have a Devin Booker. So they just everyone does their own thing. And that's where I think he could fit in, just because I think he'll be shooting on a higher volume in the NBA. And obviously the off the dribble shooting improvement from his freshman year to sophomore year was insane. He shot just 2 for 19 on long twos as a freshman, and then bumped it up to 49 for 115, which is 42% as opposed to 10% from his freshman to sophomore year. And he only had 1 pull-up jumper his freshman year and 39 in his sophomore year. So that's elite.
That's the critical thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think when you watch 41% from 3 is really impressive, even if you're just shooting catch and shoot threes in the corner wide open. That would still be impressive. But he's taking difficult shots. This is a guy that people know he shoots threes. There's people closing out on him consistently. He has to find ways to fake it, get open, dribble into the shot if he has to, get screened off the ball. He's taking difficult shots and still hitting them at a 41% rate. And I think you combine a almost 7-foot wingspan with a 41% 3-point shot. That's just one of those things that does not happen often, and that's the type of player that Sam said the Suns want, and I think you're right. Like we talk about it all the time. Devin Booker if you're committing to that, you want players like this. But the truth is, every team wants a player like this. But the best situation is that you put them next to a superstar like Devin Booker. That's where they become the best possible situation. If we're talking about development too, I think it's interesting. I think a guy like Isaac Okoro, you talk about his shot and how that's such a swing. Like, you want him to be able to develop that shot eventually. And I think what's nice about the Suns and the situation they're in now is if you draft a guy like Okoro, you can say, here's your role. You're going to play defense, you're going to get rebounds, you're going to cut when the cut's open, but what you need to work on right now is eventually getting great at that three-pointer. And I think what's nice is you're not putting him in the situation like Josh Jackson where, hey, Josh Jackson, you're now considered the second best player on this team. You have to be a star eventually. You get to bring him along slowly, and that's how you become a good three-point shooter eventually. I think what the difference is with Devin Vassell is I think he fits into an NBA roster right away. He's got the body for it, a lot skinnier than Okoro, 25 pounds less in their listed weight, and essentially the same height. But he's got that three-pointer down right away, and that means the type of development that Vassell's going to do is the type of development that you're seeing going on with a guy like Mikal Bridges, where it is the type of development that can turn you from a role player into like a high-level role player, I'm afraid to say it, or even at some point a star, like a star player. And I see that type of potential for a guy like Vassell, where I'm like ultra confident that this is a sure thing. Now, I'm going to ask you again, do you need to talk me off the ledge here, or do you also see a potential star in the making with Devin Vassell?
So I think he's definitely has a chance to be a star role player. I'm not sure like star, but I could see a world where he hits, like a Chris Middleton type of offensive threshold. Like, that's absolute best case scenario, just because they're kind of similar in how, Middleton doesn't have crazy burst. He's not this like super athlete, but he can like handle the ball and he could shoot over smaller defenders because of his length. So that's kind of like a best case type of offensive outcome, which it would take a lot, but I wouldn't rule it out. And, I think he could have a similar career path to like Mikal, how his rookie year, a lot of fans just saw the points per game, like casual fans saw the points per game, are a little disappointed. But, he still had a historically good rookie season defensively. Like, you look at the numbers, they're actually insane. And he deserved to be a second team all rookie. That voting is a joke. Anyways. But yeah, I think, a star is reaching a little bit, but like it's definitely not out of the realm of possibilities. I think he could be a star role player that's more realistic. But if like the off the dribble stuff is real, then you're going to look like an absolute genius, Mike.
Yeah, I think that's what excites me most, because if Devin Vassell was just a 3-and-D guy, it's the critical thing for me.
Yeah.
If Devin Vassell was just a 3-and-D guy and he shot, 20% on long twos this year like he did in his freshman season, I wouldn't be that excited. But the fact that he has that off the dribble ability, it adds an additional layer that's so interesting to his game, because obviously every NBA team is looking for these 3-and-D guys. But when the playoffs come, we've also seen kind of team archetypes that are built around a superstar and then a bunch of guys who hit threes and play defense. But basically I'm talking about the Houston Rockets. Those guys will get the ball in the corner and they're afraid to pump fake and they're afraid to dribble and they just sit there and they shoot the three. And the fact that you're confidently telling me that Devin Vassell is not that guy, maybe he doesn't have the most burst in the world, but he isn't afraid to take a couple dribbles, go for the pull-up two, maybe slash all the way to the rim every once in a while, is really telling about what his potential could be. The interesting thing to me is that Vassell seemed to be as bad at his pull-up shooting in his freshman season as Isaac Okoro just was. So, is there any possibility, do you think, Brandon, where Okoro has the same exact development in the next year of his development arc, that he also becomes a kind of a pull-up shooter, or is he just so much more raw than even Vassell was a year ago?
Yeah, it's a little a tricky question, I would say, just because Okoro is not going to be going back to Auburn. So, obviously being a rookie in the NBA is a different, he's not going to have the same opportunity that Vassell did as far as volume and all that. But I think just with Vassell's 41% shooting as a freshman, even though it was a low volume, kind of speaks towards you could kind of see that happening. With Okoro, I'm not as confident. I think it's going to be a multi-year thing. And you look at what Boston did with Jaylen Brown and even Marcus Smart, just how they developed them with their three-pointer to where, they're not sharpshooters, but they're, competent at this point. And I think he'll have a similar career arc where, when the shot does come, because I think it will eventually get to points where it's not a disaster with Okoro. It's just a matter of like when that happens. So yeah.
I think that he has to change his mechanics.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that there might just kind of break him down and build him back up
Isn't
again.
Isn't it a shame that we just lost Darko Rajakovic? Because he was credited with rebuilding Mikhail's shot. Yeah. And it would give you a hell of a lot more confidence about him doing the same thing with Okoro.
Yeah, yep. And I think that's why it's going to matter as far as who joins the team going forward. But I just think if you have to rebuild a guy's jump shot, there's a chance it's great at some point, but I think it's going to take some time in order to get there. Whereas with Vassell, the mechanics are there. You watch it, it looks good. It looks like what you want it to look like for a guy with those long of arms. And I think we didn't talk about it much. Okoro's wingspan relatively short for his size. Obviously, Vassell is insanely long. Actually, we haven't really covered his physical profile much at all. Tall, skinny, and long. I mean, I guess is what
tall,
he
dark,
is.
and handsome. Yeah, no, he's 6'7", 6'10" wingspan. He's pretty. His profile's pretty similarly to Okoro. Okoro's also got a 6'9" wingspan, but
6'8.5" is what I saw.
Or 6'8.5".
listed.
Well, you know what?
Which is big.
What I think it might be is a 6'8.5" wingspan at power forward versus a 6'10" wingspan at small forward is really where you feel the difference, right?
Right. That's interesting, and I think the difference with what makes them good. They're both smart defenders, and I think I want to give credit to Okoro there too. But what makes Okoro good defensively in a lot of ways, and Brandon, feel free to correct me if I'm wrong. Here is his strength, and the wingspan thing could be why some GMs pass on him early. But that strength, I think, matters a lot with Vassell. He's got the length, and he doesn't necessarily have the strength, but where Okoro is a really smart level defender, I look at some of the stuff that Vassell's doing, and I see like one of those genius level type of defender guys where, I'm sorry, I know.
Another Shane Battier comparison incoming.
I'm going over the top here because
James Jones is just going to keep drafting Shane Battiers and clones of himself, and then
I'll take them all. I'll take them all. I watched this game against Duke earlier in the season, and the stuff he's doing, he's fronting guys, he's playing help defense, he's jumping the passing lanes, he's locking guys down one-on-one, he's insanely smart in team defensive schemes, and all of this happening in a single game, and all of it happening time and time again, possession after possession after possession. And I think that's why I'm so high on him. I think that's why a lot of guys are so high on him. You called him the smartest defender in the draft, too. Now, is that a good comparison as far as these two guys? And I don't want to discount Okoro. If you think he's that level of defender, feel free to correct me. But, that's just how I see it.
Yeah, I think right now Vassell's the better defender. But where Okoro has an edge on him, I would say, is just the on-ball stuff. Like, as you mentioned, just the strength. I think team defense is more valuable than on-ball for the most part. But right. if Okoro does develop, like I think he can off-ball and just gets better with his rotations and running the passing lanes and all that kind of stuff, then he has a chance to be better than Vassell just due to, his frame.
Right.
But that's going to take time. And I think, like, Vassell is a better bet to be the better defender. But they're both probably right. I would put them 1 and 2 in this class as far as just pure defense.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately the fact that we're talking about, you said you think there's a 50% chance that one of these two guys drops, and it's the number 1 and number 2 defender in the class. And right. we could pair one of those guys with Mikal Bridges. It's a win-win all around. Maybe one guy has to develop some of this and the other guy has to develop some of that. But if we're talking about how scary a defense would be with DeAndre Ayton making the strides that he is, and then you have Mikal Bridges and one of these guys, it's really interesting to think about. Let me ask you this, Brandon. We already talked about Okoro being a little bit more raw. He comes in year 1. Maybe his job is to be the garbage man and hustle and play 10 to 15 minutes and no more. Devin Vassell, what do you think he can do in year 1 or year 2? Could he contribute to playoff basketball right away, potentially? Would he force the Suns into a situation, even with the 3 wings that we currently have, to find maybe more minutes for him somehow?
Yeah, I could see that. He's especially it's an 82-game season. A lot of stuff's going to happen. There's going to be foul trouble, injuries, just hot streaks, cold streaks. So there's always going to be minutes for a guy like him, and it's going to be tough to keep him off the floor, honestly. And I could see him playing 15 to 20 minutes a night. I think he's a little more NBA ready than Okoro for all the reasons we've kind of already gone over. So yeah, I think he's someone, he's not going to carve out like this crazy like 30 minutes a game role just because of all the wing depth they have. But if he went to a team where they needed him to do that, I think he could, and it wouldn't be a complete disaster.
Right. Get ready for some Kelly Oubre at center minutes. I'm ready for it.
Let's do it.
I want to. It's happened. Like, this is something that's happened in the past. It's a proven thing, and I would love to see it. So I'm guessing, just if you look at these two guys, you have Vassell over Okoro. Where do you have Okoro on your big board right now?
Right now I have him 7th, so not too far off. I just think the jumper is just such a question mark, and but yeah, if you're trying to take a swing, like if I was a team that didn't already have a star in place like the Suns do, I'd probably take Okoro over Vassell, and that's why I think boards are kind of like general boards are fine just for your own personal use, but like team boards are like the most important thing. And so yeah, Okoro, I'd take it. Like if I was like the Cavs or the Hornets or something like that, I'd probably take Okoro.
Maybe the Bulls.
Yeah, Bulls as well. Just a team that needs to take a swing. But if you already have your like star in place and like your foundation set, and your creators, then Vassell makes a lot more sense. And I think the Suns have that. So
you like both guys at 10. You said you wouldn't trade up for Okoro. Would you trade up for Vassell?
I would. Yeah. There's
the distinction.
Absolutely. And it's not even a knock really on Okoro. It's just more, I think Vassell, he's someone that's going to like raise your floor as well. And if you're trading a future pick, like let's just throw the 2022 pick out there. And, by then you're hoping, you're betting on this core to be picking like in the mid to late first round. And you have such a good young core in place that, it's not really that much of a loss. And the team that's going to be trading back, they're going to be happy. They're getting an asset and probably drafting someone that they like just as much as Vassell, possibly, depending on who it is. So I think this is the draft where everyone's going to try to trade back. So if you can move up for Vassell or like Killian Hayes, I would do it just because it secures you such a strong, like young core.
Do you think Vassell can play at shooting guard too? Like, is that something that you think he can play up to?
Yeah, I think so. It just depends too on the creation on like the rest of the floor as well.
God,
at least right away.
Positionless basketball, guys.
Yeah. So like, imagine this line.
Playing Cam Johnson at center next year, and it's going to be beautiful. We'll have too many wings, an abundance of wings.
That's what I want. And it's funny because I look at this and I think part of me thinks you draft one of these guys, and part of the reason you draft one of them is insurance if Kelly Oubre leaves or if things don't work out, whatever happens. And yeah, that's fun to think about, but I want all four. I just love the idea. I love the idea of the sort of interchangeable positions that they play, and with Devin Booker and the development he's had at point guard, we all talk about it. That opens up the potential of playing these sort of massive lineups around him, where he's the shortest guy on the floor. And that's just a fun thing to think about, and that's the ideal for me in a lot of these scenarios. I like both of these guys. Maybe there are other guys that are going to be available, but right now, just looking at both of these guys, it's a fascinating thing. And I think you're right. I think Vassell probably can play right away. Okoro, like limited role, develop him slowly, and it'll work out. But what are your thoughts?
I have like one random thought that relates to both of these guys, and that's just like, you look at like the free agency class, like for this year and then even next year, guys like Vassell and Okoro are not there. Like these guys don't grow on trees.
That's really true.
I would rather, just go out and sign like a DJ Augustine than draft Cole Anthony or Kyra Lewis or Grant Riller, when you can go out and draft Okoro or Vassell, who teams are always going to want these types of guys. And, I don't know. It's just like you shouldn't really look at free agency as a reason to do this or that, but just the way the league is trending and how easy it is to find like a capable backup point guard, even if it's just for like a year, 2 years, whatever it is. It's a lot easier to go that route, and you're not sacrificing like talent or value in the process.
I still wouldn't mind them going out, signing my guy Justin Holiday, also picking up one of Vassell or Okoro, and just having,
my God,
like just and then go and sign Shaq Harrison, bring him back, and then just like length, length
I'm
everywhere.
in. I'm in.
That's my
and
my
a fully
ideal.
defensive bench lineup.
Derrick Jones
Yes,
Jr. too. We figured
Bring
it
him
out.
back.
Center. Put him at center. Yeah.
It's just it's just Devin Booker go out there and score 30 points per game, run pick and rolls for DeAndre Ayton,
Yeah.
and then everyone else just kind of flaps
Hey.
about.
I'm just gonna say this, guys. But what is the team that Devin Booker grew up idolizing? It's
The
the
Pistons.
Detroit
Bad boys.
Pistons
That's true.
Or
with
not the
Rip
Bad Boys, but
Hamilton.
yeah.
No, it's the team that was built on defense with one offensive guy carrying the entire team. So
Wasn't
hey,
that team was such an aberration though? Like, can another team ever win like that? You know, with like Rip Hamilton.
Maybe-
being your
maybe
number
with,
one
like, a
scoring
Ben-
option?
Yeah, the Raptors just did, right? That's kind of what happened.
Kawhi was different. You know, like
I mean, yeah, but are you gonna get mad if I tweet Rip Hamilton was different? People don't remember.
I'm sure if you go
Dude
back
was a
into Devin
bucket.
Booker's tweets from like 2012 when he was tweeting about Hooters, he would be tweeting the same sort of thing about Rip Hamilton. He was like, "Yo, that boy Rip Hamilton, he's different, bro." But
Yeah,
no, I don't know.
Okay, I want to just I don't want to get off this train of thought real quick, and then we'll let you go, Brandon. But you talked about the ease of finding a backup point guard, and if you're looking for that backup point guard, yes, and I agree with all of that. And I actually think if you're trying to put together a sort of a war chest of assets to try and make the type of trade that you make for a potential superstar, I think Vassell is better for that as well, because he's just one of those guys that has a type of potential. And I mean better for that than necessarily drafting a young point guard, because young point guards take so much time to develop. So having said that, you've made the case for trading up for Vassell. You've made the case for trading up for Killian Hayes. If the Suns were to trade up for one player of those two, which one would you prefer?
I would go with Killian Hayes. Just he's my number 2 ranked prospect, and I think he would be like a absolutely perfect fit next to Devin Booker on so many levels. Like, that's your long-term guy. As much as it pains me to pass on Vassell, he's one of the few I would take over him. But again, it just depends on the asking price too, because like, let's say Hayes goes like 4th or 5th or something. It's going to be a lot more than like trading up for Vassell at like 6 or 7 potentially. So,
Right.
so there's like layers to it, but yeah, I would like in a vacuum, I would take Hayes over Vassell.
Yeah, it would be like that stupid trade that Bleacher Report keeps suggesting, right? Where like the Warriors call you up and they've got number 2 and a trade exception, and they want like Kelly Oubre and 10. Like, would you do that for Killian Hayes?
No,
And then you
no,
take Hayes
I
at 2?
don't think
No,
that
you
makes.
wouldn't
I
do
don't think that makes sense. So I think they need
Yeah,
as many
that's
NBA
interesting.
players as possible, and even if they're going to trade Oubre, they need an NBA player back, basically, or clear
What if you had
cap space for
Eric
like
Pascal in that trade?
no.
You don't want to re-team up Mikal Bridges and
I kind of like it.
I
mean,
I don't
I-
mind it. Like, I like Pascal. I don't think that trade. Like, if you're going to trade Oubre, I think it should be for something much greater.
Yeah, the only way you do that is if Oubre says, "Hey, I don't think I'm coming back after this year."
Yeah,
and then you do that. I think.
and Oubre wouldn't do that.
No, I don't think he would.
I don't
yeah,
think
it's a really tough situation with his contract. Honestly, I've just had headaches thinking about what they're going to do. I'm glad I'm not James Jones.
Yeah, and honestly, I think the most likely scenario is they're okay with the cap space if he ends up leaving, because that free agency class is just more interesting than this current free agency class.
Yeah, but the question is, are they going to retain the flexibility to have cap space, right? Like, because if they go out this year and they, sign a bunch of guys to 2-year deals,
right,
then they don't have that cap space anymore, regardless of if Kelly leaves.
Yeah, and that's a good point. And there still would be I think there still would be ways to create cap space relatively easier next season, maybe than it would be this season. Like, because we're talking about, if you're creating max space, you're talking about, in a lot of cases, sacrificing Kelly Oubre or Ricky Rubio. If you're sacrificing a Kelly Oubre at some point of his career because he doesn't want to come back, and then maybe only 1 year of Ricky Rubio, that's a little easier to swallow, I think, for a general manager. But I don't know. I think there's a lot of time to talk about that, though, going forward for you and I, Sam. So I'm not going to spend the last 20 minutes of this podcast talking about it. I just want to say, Brandon, thank you for joining us. I think you have done more work to cover these guys than Sam and I have, and I think that brought a lot of expertise to this. So thank you for joining us. Do you have anything that you would like to plug before we let you go?
Yeah, just check out the Timeline. It's my favorite podcast. Other than that, no. Thanks for having me on, guys. It was was a lot of fun. Always a good time to be on here. So thanks for
We'll
having me.
We'll drop a link to your Patreon. So if people want to check out
the
2021 big board that you just did, they can do that. That's going to be really interesting, I think, next year. As someone who, let me just ask you this before we let you go. I think as someone who doesn't give a shit about college basketball, like I don't have an allegiance. No, I'm sorry. No, I respect. Truthfully, I respect what you guys do because it's interesting to me.
Yeah.
But just college teams, I don't really care about that until March Madness. What do you think about multiple top 10 prospects next year being on the G League select team and like that, how that whole process is going to go down? I know there was just a new development today. I forget who broke the news about they're thinking of having their own bubble where those guys can kind of develop in that environment and play other G League teams.
Yeah, it's first off the 21 class. Maybe I've just been stuck watching 2020 for so long. It's like diluted my brain, but like it's one of my favorite classes, like probably in recent history. I think it's going to be stacked. There's so much like star power and like depth. So I don't want the Suns to trade their 21 pick, like no matter what. And yeah, the whole G League situation is going to be very fascinating. Just it's going to be really a new era of like scouting, because you're going to have to compare like how these guys look against professional players, and a lot of like grown men, because they're saying it's going to be like undrafted free agents and then like G Leaguers and stuff like that. So
that's it's so interesting, and it's got to make it way harder for you guys.
Yeah, definitely. It's kind of going to be like how it is like scouting like in like Euroball, just like how Luka just made professionals look like children. And there's gonna be outliers like that. But yeah, for players that just like come in and struggle right away, it's gonna be tough to like really have anything to compare that to. So it's gonna be really interesting, like first year.
Yeah, who knows when that draft's gonna be. Thank you for joining us, Brandon. For the Timeline fans here, we'll be back next week. If you have ideas of something you'd like to hear us talk about, feel free to let us know. You guys know how to get a hold of us. Welcome to the timeline of Phoenix Suns.
I'm so sorry. I blew it up. I'm so sorry. You want?
Now I have to leave this in.
No. Brandon.
I'm your host, Brandon, and go ahead.
Nobody builds 5G like Verizon builds 5G, because we're the engineers who built the most reliable network in America. And the more you do with 5G, the more building it right matters. The more your network matters. The more Verizon engineers going the extra mile matters. It's us pushing us. It's Verizon versus Verizon. 5G built right from America's most reliable network. Most reliable based on rankings from RootMetrics second half 2020 U.S. report of 3 mobile networks. Results may vary. Award is not an endorsement.